Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this evening's overview and scrutiny committee meeting, Warwick District Council on the 9th of June 2026. Please be aware the meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and also as part of the Council's commitment to reduce the use of paper, many councillors may be using electronic devices during the course of the meeting, although I've just seen the pile on Councillor Barton's desk. Shame on you. I'm Councillor Milton, I'm chair of the committee, and alongside me I have Darren Knight, Deputy Chief Executive, Mia Matthews, Principal Committee Services Officer, and Kelly Barnard, who's our Scrutiny Officer. In addition, we also have Liz Young, Community Safety Manager, Becky Davis, Climate Change Adaptation Officer, Andrew Rollins, Head of Finance, will be here later, and Becky North, Housing Development Programme Manager. So councillors, we do have members of the public here this evening, so I will go through the emergency procedure, just in case. There are no planned tests of the emergency alarm, but if it does sound, everyone present must leave by the designated exit route. If you're on the balcony, it's the door behind you. If the preferred route is blocked, use the nearest signed alternative route. Don't use the lift. Everyone must assemble at the designated point, which is the central reservation in Regent Grove in front of the police station, just over there. And members of the public and press should report to a member of the town hall staff who will be wearing yellow fluorescent jackets. Councillors and officers should report to the committee services officer, and please do not re-enter the building until the fire officer advises that it is safe to do so. Right, item number 1. Apologies and substitutions. We have Councillor Matecki substituting for Councillor Day, Councillor Harrison substituting for Councillor Gorman, and Councillor Dixon substituting for Councillor Payne. Are there any other apologies I should be aware of? No. Councillor Matecki, Harrison and Councillor Dixon, thank you very much for stepping in this evening. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Okay. Okay, so before we go on to minutes, members will be aware that we've had a late confidential item which arrived at 11 minutes past 5, an urgent item for us to review this evening. That's tight by anyone's timescales. What I'm going to do, because it's an item that will need to be heard in confidential session, so what I'm proposing to do for members is we'll run the meeting as normal, then when we move into confidential session, there's one other item in confidential as well. What I will do before we get to the larger paper, the late paper, is I'll allow members a 15-minute comfort break and also an opportunity to just familiarise themselves with the contents of that paper as well. So rather than adjourn the meeting now, we'll do it later on, and we'll try and use the time wisely, because I'm also aware we've had a record of having some fairly long and extensive meetings. 2 days, I think, was the last one we did. So I want to be conscious of members' time, but also make sure that we can scrutinise properly as well. So hopefully that's okay with members as a proposal of how to handle that. I'm getting a couple of nods. Good, we'll go with that. Right, item 3 then, the minutes. Confirm the minutes of the meetings held on 28th of April 2026 and the 26th of May 2026. I propose taking those together. I will propose those from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Barton, you got there first. All those in favour? Good, I think that's everybody. Councillor Dixon, are you happy with those minutes?
I am happy with those minutes, Chair, except I wasn't at those meetings, so I don't know whether I can actually vote on this item.
You're being asked to vote to accept them. So.
I will accept them.
Right, thank you. So just wanted to make sure there wasn't anything that we'd missed. Right, item 4, work programme. So that's our standing item to review the work programme and ask for any additions or changes to it. I do suspect that by the end of the meeting, there might be a couple of things that we want to add on to it, particularly relating to the confidential item. But is there anything immediately on people's minds that think it would be good for us to be looking at on there? Councillor Kohler.
I just note that we've got paddling pool update due in September. Considering the latest that I've heard about the paddling pool, I was wondering whether it was worth doing anything sooner.
We can pick that up with officers. Councillor Kohler, if members are happy for me to explore that, unless Mr. Knight wants to give us an update now, or any of the other portfolio holders wish to step forward. Councillor Roberts, would you like to give us a quick...
Yeah, what I will say is there will be hopefully some positive news coming up very shortly on this. And I will leave it at that at this point.
Okay, can I suggest do we know when that positive news may come? I love soon.
Mr. Knight, would you like to come in here?
Thank you, Councillor Roberts. There will be some, we expect some positive news issued this week.
Right.
I think one of the things that Councillor Roberts has committed to was obviously reviewing the paddling pools as part of overviewing the Scrutiny Committee. And I think Zoe, the Head of Service, will be approaching the committee chair about a date when she thinks that would be appropriate. So, yes.
Great, thank you. Well, we'll await that update with interest. And then I'll catch up with Zoe regarding when we can bring that back. If we can bring it back sooner than the September schedule, we will. Okay, anything else? No, okay, just to note, I'm meeting with officers next week, actually, just to discuss the work programme in a bit more detail. So we'll bring a more detailed review of it at the next session. Right, item 5 on the agenda is the overview and scrutiny end of term report. That is really just for us to, actually no, we have to approve it. I thought it was to noting. So what we're asking here is that the committee recommends to council that it notes the end of term report for this committee for the municipal year 2025-2026 is detailed in Appendix A to the report. Are there any questions or comments on that before I propose it? No? Okay, I'll propose that as I've just set out. Is there a seconder? Councillor Armstrong, thank you. All those in favour? Great, thank you very much. Right, item 6 then, which is our first substantive item of the evening, is the South Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership Annual Performance Report. So this is something that we review every year. We're joined by Liz Young, Community Safety Manager, Chief Inspector Simon Ryan, and also we have Councillor Jim Sinnott, who's the portfolio holder and one of our 2 board representatives. The report is in the papers, but I'm going to come to Liz, am I coming to you just to give us an overview and introduction to the report?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. I'd also like to introduce Michelle Clark, who's the Community Safety Team Leader as well, who's accompanying me this evening. I'm pleased to present the South Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership Annual Performance Report for 25-26. The report sets out the progress made over the last year in delivering against the CSP's key priorities, including antisocial behaviour, violent crime, domestic abuse, business crime and rural crime. It also reflects the strength of partnership working across South Warwickshire, the impact of externally funded initiatives, and the important contribution of our community safety, CCTV and warden teams. Also, we've got obviously Simon Ryan here, Chief Inspector, Southern Area Commander, to today's meeting, and he's available to take any relevant questions relating to the role of the police in delivering the Community Safety Partnership priorities in partnership with Warwick District Council and the other responsible authorities. Overall, the report shows positive progress, whilst also being clear about the challenges ahead in terms of demand, legislation and resources. I hope it gives the committee assurance that the partnership is working proactively and effectively to keep our communities safe. So I'll now hand over to elected members if you have any questions on the report. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Just before I come to Councillor Dre, Councillor Sinnott, is there anything you want to add as portfolio holder for this?
No, thank you very much, Chair.
Right, okay. I think just in terms of trying to keep a good discussion on this, I'd probably allow sort of 30, 45 minutes maximum on this as well, just to keep the agenda of the meeting going, if possible. So, Councillor Dre, we will come to you first.
4 questions. I represent Saltersford Ward. How can residents safely get involved with or voice concerns with the local safer neighbourhood team? How can residents safely get involved with or voice concerns to the local safer neighbourhood team?
I'm happy to say that, Chair, thank you. Thank you. The local neighbourhood team are well engaged, obviously, with those within Saltersford Ward. The police post isn't far from that location, and whilst it doesn't have a public-facing opening time, the officers have got a great visible presence either online or at lots of events that we go to. There's also, obviously, any of the community centres, any of the local shops. So we are regularly at the Sainsbury's. And just keep an eye out for us. I appreciate that not all members of our community have access to social media, so we do a lot of foot patrols, we do a lot of leaflet drops indoors as well. But again, if there are any challenges or you think that you are not engaged with your selection at your community, then please let me know and I will make sure that there is a direct link into that policing team. There is a dedicated policing team for Warwick Town.
Thank you. I've got some more. What specific outreach or educational programmes are being run in local schools and community centres in Saltersford to promote, to prevent prejudice? Yes, that's where I represent.
So, sorry, just before we come in, just a note to members. So, Councillor Dre, I know obviously Saltersford is a particular source of interest for you, but it'd be good if we could sort of recognise this across the whole of the district, because we are here to represent all our residents. So perhaps, it's a good question, but perhaps we could answer it across the district rather than purely for Saltersford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms, certainly, of doing outreach work in terms of community safety, we do a lot of work with youth organisations, specifically Young People First. We've worked with them for 2-3 years now. We've been fortunate to benefit from external funding that's enabled them to really sort of increase their capacity and expand the number of projects that they do with our young people across the district. And the work that they do covers a whole raft of different agendas. I mean, you mentioned about challenging prejudice, Councillor. So they will explore areas such as hate crime, for example. They will also look at increasingly and worryingly the area of misogyny that is becoming prevalent, you know, across not just nationally, but you know, further afield. They will look at healthy relationships within schools and doing lots of group work, both in schools, but also they've used our safe space quite frequently as well. And they've really engaged with quite a lot of our vulnerable youngsters in terms of having those conversations and providing literally that safe space for them to be able to share their concerns and their challenges as a young person. So it's proved, you know, a fantastic working relationship that we have with Young People First, and they sort of obviously reach groups that possibly, you know, as a sort of authorities or police or whatever else might struggle to really engage with. So it's, you know, Michelle's been very instrumental in building those relationships and coming up with joint project ideas. in all different areas across the district. So that's proved really beneficial.
And just from a policing perspective, we've got a neighbourhood engagement team, so it's a team dedicated for the engagement of young people. That can be in a school setting, so in education facilities, at a youth club. So again, across the district, there is lots of engagement with designated safeguarding leads within education facilities. The team are really well versed and well in the part of the school set up now around our DSLs. They will also run workshops around some of those themes. They've got a VR capability, so they run some really good workshops around VR. So we're challenging our young people around key themes such as VORG, knife crime, hate-related offences, just actually looking at where different choices take people down different paths. So there's a great deal of awareness being done as well as the back end when offences are committed. Our youth justice team are still engaged from a youth offending service. So we are supporting that young person all the way through from school, all the way through into the youth justice system if they do, I'm unfortunate, find themselves there as well.
How can victims, across the board, I had Saltersbury, but across the board, access local support services such as equality and inclusion partnerships or Warwickshire victim support?
From a policing context, yeah, absolutely. There is a referral process when an investigation is recorded and we've got an identified victim. They are automatically asked for their consent to refer because obviously they have to give consent. And then that can be, that support is there all the way through that life cycle of that investigation and also afterwards if it goes to court. There is victim care, witness support, etc. There is also an opportunity for special measures for our victims in a court setting. So if a case does go to court, there are special measures that we can take to protect their identity, protect their vulnerability, and any identified characters that actually we need to consider to support them as well.
Great, thank you, Councillor Dre. Councillor Mateki, come to you now.
Thank you, Chair. Rather than ask a question, I just want to congratulate the team and the service that's actually been done. I think a lot of people sort of think things are going to be magically done. I think when people, whether it's residents or whoever, speak out, things do get done. I know I've contacted Liz in the past and I've got things resolved, and I had another couple of incidents where the police were really well involved and actually had some excellent results for some pretty bad and antisocial behaviour. So, you know, what I would say is, you know, residents who have a problem, you know, speak to your councillors. It's like potholes. Everybody complains about potholes, and they think somebody else has reported it. It's better that 10 people report it than nobody does. So, you know, get engaged, and it really does work, and I can tell you that from personal experience. So thank you for the work that you have been doing.
Thank you, Councillor Mateki. Councillor Knight.
I just want to say thank you for all the work you're doing and the team. And you answered some of the questions already what I'm going to ask. But when I do my ward walk around, residents still complain, say that the antisocial behavior is still high. But I know your team working very hard to reduce it. But what mechanism you have to also reassure residents that it's not really high? You're working very hard to reduce the worse, like the winter, the summertime coming up now, and you know that like new ball commands and so on, there's a lot of antisocial behavior around that area also, just to reassure residents that you're
with regard to antisocial behaviour when the sun comes out. We do a great deal of work in terms of tackling antisocial behaviour. I mean, Michelle and our other community safety officer in the team, I mean, we have our ASB inbox, which obviously we monitor on a daily basis and deal with complaints and requests for service as they come in. We actively go out and engage with residents. We do drop-ins. We've certainly got a plan leading up to the summer holidays to actually get out and do some, get out in our parks in the lead up to the summer holidays with a gazebo and set up stall and really engage with residents to just try and reassure them about the plans that we've got in the lead up to the summer holidays. And, you know, we're very much, with regard to ASB, we very much have a victim-centred approach to ASB. And, you know, we we'll go to great lengths to totally engage with the victim, provide the necessary support. We have what we call ASB case reviews now, used to be called the community trigger. So if you have people who are victims of persistent ASB, then we can actually engage with them on the basis of an ASB case review and do a full case management investigation with them. And this is really sort of taking their issues seriously and coming to a satisfactory conclusion for that person and making sure that they're involved throughout the whole process, because the voice of the victim is so important. So we hope that that provides reassurance, and we do proactively promote ASB case reviews on our website. So if people are feeling that they're not being heard with the problems and issues that they've got, then the information is all there on their website to actually contact us, and we will then assist them in that way to get to a satisfactory conclusion. Something you want to add, Michelle?
No, just in relation to the ASB case review, with your constituents and the residents here, if they're too worried to be involved in it, you as councillors can instigate it on their behalf, and you can be that voice for them. So that is just another avenue as well that you can also do it, and that also provides the victims with reassurance if they don't want to be involved in it.
Just to add to that, and what we always, and Simon will reinforce this, is just constantly encouraging people to report ASB. I know sometimes there might be a bit of cynicism that nothing happens as a result, but we really do need residents to report ASB. And with due respect, not just to go through their counsellor, or not just to put something online, but to report it to police, because only by building up that evidence will police be able to actually respond and actually take some action. So it's really imperative that we get that message across, and we'll certainly be doing that in the lead up to the summer holidays.
Chair, if I may, can I just come in on that point as well? So, yeah, I take that absolutely. It's really important that we listen to our communities. So where they're telling us that there is antisocial behaviour in a particular area, that it's right that we should review that. We are, through the new antisocial behaviour strategy that the force has, which is aligned to a national policy and obviously one aligned to the ASB strategy for Warwick District Council. We have got a raft of powers that we can use around dispersal authorities, around visibility, around protection notices. We will commit to carrying out street surveys where my officers will go out with a QR code to people's addresses where we get roads or avenues reporting issues. We will commit to environmental visual audits so we can go and understand the logistics of the problems there, if it's a location, a person, a time, a place. And we will work closely with our partners to make sure that actually we can do as much as we possibly can to reduce that antisocial behaviour. We're not going to arrest our way out of it. It's not just a policing matter, but there are a raft of powers that we have got civilly and criminally to take positive action against people. And hopefully some of the councillors in the room will have seen some of the actions that we've done around Crompton Street, around the racecourse, that we are continuing those battles at St Nicholas Park. So again, but it's really important for me to be able to put the right people in the right location at the right times to have those reports in.
Thank you. Councillor Sinnott, did you want to come in on this point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a really, really difficult picture. ASB, to manage it, highly complex. I thought, could you comment on the day trippers, people coming in from out of town? It's not necessarily a homegrown issue. It's that we've got a wonderful green parks and amenities that people come visiting.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that, Lizzie, if you want.
Go on, then you go first.
No problem. It's no surprise to anybody that the recent change in weather connected to a public school holiday saw a vast use of our green open spaces. What we have seen in Warwick District is we've seen a group of youths who are from outside of our force area, so they are from West Midlands, using the public service network to get across normally by train from Birmingham or inner city areas, and then cause havoc and cause despair across some of our local communities. We've seen that predominantly in Stratford. We saw it earlier this year, but we've not seen it in Warwick District until the half term recently. So there is lots of work ongoing to do to make sure that actually if that happens again, which I think it will do, that actually we're in a really good place going into the summer around what policing operation looks like, what the community support looks like, what the support from the community safety team looks like. But also, it's not just that, it's wider than that. So obviously we've got the Canals and River Trust, given that we've had such tragic loss of life in the last month around our open water spaces. We're doing lots of safety work with our LRF partners as well, such as fire and around that water prevention and water safety. So again, absolutely, where we get names and addresses of people, we're taking positive action around them by putting ABCs on there or dispersal orders wider than that for ASB in a particular area which the police can put in. But again, it's just my ask is of councillors, please work with us. Please, we are absolutely committed to having those community engagement events. So we are listening to people and telling us of their concerns, so we can do something positive around that as well.
Great, thank you, Chief Inspector. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report and all the work. And it's good to see the community wardens doing so well as well for another year. I just wanted to ask, given that we've got this funding transition with Operation Resolve ending and the Cabinet funding changing, do you anticipate anything happening with the community wardens there or any issues to look out for? Or is the transition just going well?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, yes, Resolve funding has come to an end. As a result of that, I mean, that funding covered 2 additional wardens on a fixed-term contract basis, very much focused on policing the late nighttime economy. As a result of the funding finished, we're reverting to our original establishment. However, we are fortunate that the council have really shown a lot of faith in the warden team and has put investment in to secure what has been fixed-term contracts since the warden team started, 2 fixed-term contracts to make them permanent. So certainly by end of July, we will have a full permanent establishment for the community warden team since it started over 3 years ago. So that's a real plus for us. In terms of capacity-wise, we have reverted back to what the original MO was for the warden team when we first started the idea of forming it. And the warden teams work on a 3-shift basis up till 10 o'clock at night. So the policing of the later nighttime economy is not something that the warden team is able to continue doing on a permanent basis. However, there are exceptions to that, and we've got one big exception coming up in the form of the World Cup, where we are actually deploying them later on in the evening to work with police colleagues, particularly for England home games over the next couple of weeks. So we have still got that flexibility for wardens to be out there later on in the night time, but we do feel that the real benefit of wardens is the earlier nighttime economy, if you like, the focus being on community engagement, supporting our retail and our business community as well. So that's where we feel their real strengths lie. So yeah, we're in a good place moving forward, which is really encouraging.
Just one follow-up question on that regarding the loss of some of the nighttime cover. How's that gap being filled? Is that being filled by the police?
I wouldn't say the gap is being filled by police. We've got a dedicated patrol strategy around the tier hotspot locations around the town. We've just reviewed those going into this period post-op resolve funding. So we have refined those. We've got heat maps around time, dates and locations. So it's a fair challenge around visibility, as I'm sure all would be aware, but what we've done is be more bespoke around the times, dates and locations and areas so we can be more effective and more visible at the times where we are needed.
So it sounds like you're trying to target your resource rather than replace what was being provided by the wardens previously.
I think the way that I mean, obviously, wardens and police work extremely well together and complement each other really well since the warden team started. But I think with the warden teams finishing at 10 p.m. at night with their shifts, it is a natural handover, if you like, to the police, because obviously the wardens are limited in terms of their enforcement powers, and certainly when you get over that sort of 10 p.m. into your later nighttime economy, then that presents itself with probably increased risks in terms of intoxication and so on and so forth, which obviously the police are far more equipped to deal with. The warden team are very much a preventative team, whereas obviously the police move more into the enforcement side of things. So I think, as Simon said, it's not so much as filling a gap. It's where the cap fits, really. It's where the warden team excel, and they are effective at gathering early nighttime economy intelligence that they can then pass over to police colleagues who are taking over for the later evening. But saying that, we still, as I say, we still have capacity to assist in the later nighttime economy where it's warranted, and we also still have safe space at a weekend as well, which is open from 10 o'clock at night till 4 a.m. in the morning on a Friday and Saturday, and we are opening that additionally during World Cup games as well to provide that additional support for people out and about in the town.
Great, thank you. Right, I'll come to Councillor Dixon next, then I've got Councillor Harrison, Coolam, Mateki and Whiteman. So in terms of getting us through, that's probably going to be our lot. But Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. I do actually have a couple of questions, but can I just begin by thanking Ms Young for the answers to the two questions that I asked before the meeting, and the one on reducing extremism is probably particularly relevant given the incidents both in Belfast and in Southampton recently. Can I also, I know others have thanked, but Chief Inspector Ryan as well. Members will doubtless be aware that there's quite a lot of stuff on social media at the moment. Exchanges one way with the police, and if you can pass our thanks back to your colleagues for the work that they're doing, which is much appreciated. I actually saw the work of the police, particularly at the February event in Market Square, which passed off, as far as I could see, safely. Sorry, Chair, I should have declared an interest. It's referred to in the report. I was there. And obviously, Operation Oxnead is in, it took place in the ward that I represent as well. And actually, sorry, Chair, to go on about thanks, but can I ask Councillor Melrose to take thanks back to Mr Dark for the work. There's quite a lot of problems caused at the vacant site at what was Castle Sixth Form in Kenilworth, constantly having unwanted visitors to the site, and Mr Dark even today has been very proactive working with local residents on that. Can I also actually draw people's attention to the fact that at the Town Council, upon which I also sit, we have at each meeting a report on local reported crime stats. So we monitor it very closely and go to PCSOs when we've got particular concerns about trends that we're seeing. The two questions actually relate. Looking forward, actually, I'm conscious that as a council we received the Director of Public Health's report, I don't know how many months ago it was, on online safety. And I couldn't actually see much about that, but it does reflect in hate crime, for example. And it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about what you're doing in that area. And then the other question relates to what involvement the Community Safety Partnership might or might not be having in the draft South Warwickshire local plan, where new housing developments are being put forward, which could potentially have community safety issues as and when the developments take place. And it'd be interesting to know what engagement you're having with the South Warwickshire local plan.
Thank you, Councillor. In terms of cybercrime is a safer Warwickshire priority, a county-wide priority. So as a CSP, along with all the other district and borough CSPs, we are party to any initiatives or campaigns to do with cybercrime. It's led by the County Council, but as I say, we will support any initiatives that they are developing and roll them out on a local basis. I think in terms of the climate that we're in these days, it permeates everything in terms of cyber fraud, cyber crime, the impact across a lot of different crime types, in terms of how it can permeate its way and exploit vulnerable people the majority of the time, obviously children as well, very much so. So it is a cross-cutting issue, as I say, that permeates everything. So in terms of the areas of work, serious violence, organised crime, across a whole community, crime type agenda, the impact of the online platforms, if you like, are obviously significant. So the scope of it is huge. Us as a community safety team, we can only do so much within our remit. But like I say, we generally focus more on raising awareness. So as I say, we work with county colleagues in terms of any campaigns that they're doing, whichever target groups they happen to be. So that's how we contribute as a team, which is within our sort of scope, if you like. I mean, obviously the police, they will have their own cybercrime units and specialisms and expertise. So, we all have different parts to play.
From a Warwickshire Police perspective, we've got a cyber-enabled investigation team, so they will pick up all cyber-enabled offences. We've got a thematic priority this quarter around online sexual offences and other sexual offences. So that team are very much focused on supporting victims and preventing victims around education, enforcement, etc. But yeah, it's a space that is ever expanding, it's ever developing, and our policing footprint in that space now isn't enough. It's not where it should be, because the crime will accelerate quicker than we can probably respond to it. And I think we will need to, that's probably where we'll see the biggest investment in policing over the next decade in that space.
Okay, and I think the second question was about the South Warwickshire local plan.
Yeah, so with regard to, throughout, there's been obviously many local plans over the years, been around quite a long time. And we did encounter situations whereby we would be approached after the fact, if you like, once developments were in, full swing, so to speak, that community safety, crime prevention was a bit of an afterthought, and that's always a difficult situation once you've got a housing development about, right, what do we then put in? It's got to be something that is right there at the very beginning, in the very early planning stages. So yes, we have been engaged with our planning colleagues in terms of the developments that have been going on over the last few years. Certainly when we look at any sort of target hardening that we need to consider, CCTV, for example, when we're looking at the sort of safer streets agenda as well, in looking at how planners design their sort of, the walkways around estates and make sure that, they're well lit, for example, and all those kinds of factors that make people feel safe in their area. So we're very much, wanting to be engaged in those conversations at an early stage, so that we're not trying to design out crime after the fact. So, yeah, we are fully sort of cognizant of the work that's going on and speaking to our planning colleagues whenever we have the opportunity, and making sure that they know that they can come to us as well for advice. So yes.
Councillor Sinnott, did you want to come in on that?
Please, thank you, Chair. Absolutely. I've fed into the SWLP several times about designing out crime, get it in. I'm with Liz completely. You've got to be in there right at the very early stages to design this stuff. The police have officers who are specialists in designing out crime, and they will comment on plans. Although it's not SWLP, but the Myton Path, they've had a look at it, they've made comments, and they've fed back on it. And residents say this, the police say that, and it's part of the mix. It all gets taken on board, but I'm kind of with you where you're going, is it needs to be in their first step, and that's a consideration, absolutely. So, yeah.
Right, thank you. Councillor Sinnott. Right, I'm going to come to Councillor Harrison now, please.
Thank you, Chair. A lot of the points are already covered, and in particular, I was reassured about the ongoing situation with the community wardens, because that was one of my questions. I'm relieved that, even though the budget has come to an end, because that's so important in my ward around St. Nicholas Park in particular. On the subject of antisocial behaviour, it's interesting because obviously it's something that we all talk about, and it's keeps us all busy, if you like, and it's great that you organise these drop-in sessions. I'm thinking about Pickard Street round there. That's fantastic, and I do prefer those than public meetings from experience. I do prefer the drop-in sessions, but there we go. Looking at the graphic on this is about in Appendix 1, about the numbers. It's been shown quite an increase across the whole district. Looking from 22, 23, 23, these are the years, 22, 23, 24, and then the most recent, it's jumped up 22% in the most recent year. And I was kind of interested in that in particular. What type of ASB is that? And also, is it just a change in recording or categorisation? Because I can't imagine, because since I've been a councillor for 3-4 years now, it's been always there. Is this quite something to be concerned about, this recent increase? And I'd be interested in your comments on that. And also, I've got another couple of brief questions. But if you, on that one in particular for now, and I'll come back with one more if that's all right.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, there certainly has been an increase, specifically in nuisance ASB from this time last year. Quite a significant increase in reports. And there could be several reasons for that. That there is increased reporting. People are coming forward and reporting more. It could be down to thresholds of meeting certain criteria for ASB. Ourselves and the police, we have slightly different thresholds for ASB, so the stats could be obviously affected in that regard. But we have actually, in response to that increase, we have asked our analysts to do a deep dive into that, which it's very, it's real beneficial that we can do that when we see sort of a real sort of, marked increase in that regard. We do, sometimes we need to know what's behind that and get some context behind it. And that's also balancing it up with, what's happening on the ground and that local intelligence as well, because the data might tell us one thing, but when you start drilling behind it, you might see a spike, for example, in residential burglary. That could be down to maybe one offender who's been very busy, and you get him off the streets, and then your figures will go down again. But nuisance ASB, there's a prevalence increasingly of neighbourhood disputes. We've talked about the ASB case review, and as I say, we proactively promote that as we are required to do so. So that is encouraging people to come forward if they don't feel they're getting any resolution. So that could be another contributory factor that, we are out there encouraging people to report. But I think it's an interesting one with neighbourhood disputes, that there is a kind of feeling that people's tolerance levels in recent years are becoming less and less, and that there does seem to be a marked increase in neighbourhood disputes, that are multi-complex cases that we increasingly land in our inbox, where there's all manner of different issues that are being, and we as a council, it's not just a community safety team, but we then liaise with our environmental protection team. There might be a fly tipping issue thrown in, and there might be a noise nuisance issue. It can be multifaceted, and they can become quite complex cases. And we've definitely seen a marked increase in those, haven't we, Michelle?
Yeah.
So yes, I hope that goes some way to answering your question, and certainly when we get those deep dive results, we can come back and give you some more information on what comes out of that and how we can, come up with some more further interventions that might have some impact.
Just to come on to that point as well. So around some of the increases we've seen, they are surge, they are spikes rather than uncontrolled ASB in our towns and our parks and our centres. We are working really closely, again, as I said, in those open space locations where we do see that seasonal surge. We've probably seen that more this year than we have for the last 2-3 years. And again, also our nighttime economy. I think Warwick District, South Leamington certainly has got the largest nighttime economy of the whole county. So we do see a lot of ASB recording around that. The challenge that we've got as a police force, and Liz has just articulated about this deep dive, is understanding that what's been reported, because a reported incident may not have the same classification when it's closed. So we might have something reported at ASB, but actually it's something totally different. It could be a noise issue. But so we're trying to dissect that and understand the data so we can actually get a true and accurate reflection of what is ASB and what are other crime types. So we're just doing that piece of work at the moment.
Yep, thanks for that. Just a couple of minor ones, and I was interested in this is section 7.5 of the report. It talks about the hotspots, and there's about 3 for Leamington. Warwick's got one, it's good. But it's quite vague. It just says Warwick Town Centre. So I was kind of interested. I'd like to know which parts of Warwick are higher, more hotspots than other, to be a bit more specific on that. And also, just a point of detail, table on page 27, I was trying to understand, these are the different types of crime. You call it, it's a business intelligence across the whole district, and you've got the most recent year, 24 to 25, and then the next column is total to date. But I was kind of interested in what time period that was. This is on page 27 of Appendix 1. And because I was just trying to get my head around, it talks about comparisons, increases and decreases across those 2 different periods. I was just trying to understand what those time periods were. So sorry to throw in 2 questions there. So does that make sense? If you hotspot one, but yeah. First, okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So the hotspot, as I alluded to earlier, so we've just, as Resolve funding has come to an end, so as a force we've taken on board some of the really good work that we did where ourselves with partners such as the wardens and actually how that early intervention reduced violent crime going forward, and we've seen some significant reductions around our antisocial behaviour, our violent crime offences and other crime linked to town centres and those spaces. We've refined those down now to make them more efficient. So there was lots of wasted space, and when I say wasted space, please don't take offence that a certain area or certain street is obviously dead to us, because it absolutely isn't. But from a visibility perspective and ASB perspective, we've now done a review where we can really hone in on those repeat locations, repeat times, the geography around that location as well, so we can do something really, really visible and purposeful in reducing ASB further. So, for instance, Leamington, the town centre had 3 hotspot zones before. We've now refined it down to 2 because we can be more visible around the area that's causing us the most harm. We've taken the same approach at Warwick. I would have to check my notes to see actually what that looks like for Warwick now. But Warwick Town Centre would be, again, around the nighttime economy. We did have one previously around Warwick Race Course, because obviously that was also a significant place for ASB as well. because of some of the intervention work that we've done with partners and with our own civil interventions team, we were able to remove that problem. So actually that zone then becomes a real solution and a real success for us, because we've reduced the offending there to really small levels. We're not naive enough to think that that solves it permanently going forward, so we'll always review that, and we have that as weekly review meetings, certainly in teams, but we'll have monthly reviews at the case review meetings, etc. as well, that Liz alluded to earlier.
Sorry, Councillor Harrison, you mentioned page 27. I don't have a page 27 because mine's all split up. So can you just...
It's item, it's in the appendix 1.
Yeah.
And
The overview report. The annual overview? Yeah.
that one, thank you, that one, yeah.
Okay, right.
And it's the business intelligence is the title with lovely colours all the down it. And it's all the different categories of crime.
Right, okay.
Yep. And that was just the 2 columns, because it's quite important, because there's comparisons being made between
Yeah.
the performance for the different periods. But I was interested in what the second column, where it says total to date, what time period does that cover?
25-26, yes. That would be 25-26. So it's a direct comparison between 24 to 25. So violence with injury, for example, last year 1,045, this year 1,096. So it's the year-to-date performance.
So it's
Yes, literally year-to-date, yes. So you've got percentages there, but also it's broken down as well in summary, into actual number of offences as well. So you've got percentages, but also numbers as well.
Right, thank you. Right, Councillor Kohler.
My questions have already been covered.
Great, well, thank you very much. Councillor Mateki.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask a question. It's basically 2 questions, but they're linked together. So in the report, it shows that Warwick District has the highest reoffending rate. Just over 1 in 4 people reoffend. And so the question around that is, do we understand why they're reoffending? Is it there's a lack of support, lack of education, etc.? And what are we doing about it? And so that actually leads me into my second question. And we're talking about taking a reaction to try and do things, but what about prevention in the first place? So, do we understand why people commit crimes? Or I think we do understand there's lots of different reasons. It's lack of education, personal circumstances people find themselves in, which I'm not going to really go into. Is there anything being done to proactively go out in the community before people even start offending? And that then gets linked to the reoffending. Shouldn't there be some sort of programs and stuff with these people who have offended? Because going back to Councillor Harrison's point about the percentage, 22% increase, well, is a part of that down to the reoffending? And therefore, if there was more education, more support, whatever it could be, people come out of institutions and they haven't got housing, they're not ready, they haven't got that support network, and they end up reoffending again. So do we understand what's going on, and are we trying to stop it before it even starts?
Gosh, there's about 10 questions in one there. Certainly with reoffending, yeah, we are the highest across Warwickshire. We have a reducing reoffending board as part of our community safety partnership structures. You would have obviously probation, you've got youth justice, you've got all key partners, including local authorities and police, that sit on that board. We, as a community safety partnership, are obviously, we want to try and understand what that reoffending picture looks like, and across which crime types as well that reoffending's occurring. It's proving very difficult to unpick and get a grip on right now, to be honest with you, and we are having those ongoing conversations, and our analyst team are working hard to try and give us some richer data so we can really try and understand where the reoffending is occurring. I mean, obviously one area being potentially domestic abuse, being obviously a key area of concern, and it's trying to understand the picture of reoffending in the area of domestic abuse as well. So I can't give you a specific answer to that right now. All I would say is that it is something that's high on our agenda, and certainly at the last Community Safety Partnership Board meeting we did have a presentation on reoffending as well, because it's something that the board wanted to get a better understanding of the picture. In terms of going back to the prevention side of things, I mean, certainly that is a key priority for all community safety partnerships. And we very much focus on looking at our vulnerable youngsters. And we have structures set up. We have a child vulnerability group. We did have a child vulnerability group, but now we've actually, that's morphed into what we call the Young Futures panel. Now this is a sort of nationwide initiative that's been set up, and it really is about preventing young people from getting drawn in, from going over into serious level antisocial behaviour, and certainly being drawn into serious crime, and being, obviously at risk of exploitation. So we are part of the Young Futures pilot at the moment in South Warwickshire, and the role of that panel is to basically have referrals that go in, and those referrals can come from any number of different organisations. It can come from education, it can come from youth groups, it can come from anywhere where there are youngsters that are showing causes of concern, that are showing vulnerabilities, that are at risk of being drawn into potentially county lines activity, for example. They may be involved in minor ASB, but you can start seeing the slippery slope that they're going down. So it's those kind of youngsters that we're trying to get a grip on, that we would refer into the Young Futures panel. And on that Young Futures panel, you've got all your key agencies, those key support agencies. We've got our family and adolescent team from the County Council, we've got Youth Justice.
You've got NHS as well, because we know that, mental health and things like that. So we've got NHS that have bought into that as well, so they can actually deep dive into the previous medical history.
So the idea of that is obviously those youngsters are referred into the panel, and the panel will then obviously pull together a sort of case management plan for those youngsters to obviously get a grip of them, provide the support, and hopefully get things back on track. So that's the kind of key prevention tool that we're very much engaged in as a community safety team, as with our other partners. But I also touched upon the work that we do with Young People First and all the outreach work that they do, which is fantastic work. And they can really, like I say, hone in different areas of the district, working with other partners, and really work with some youngsters, some challenging youngsters who, are going through a lot of their own personal, challenges, as I say, and hopefully provide them with support and get things back on course. So that's the role that we feel that we can play in that regard.
Okay, great. So we're at my time limit, but Councillor Whiteman, I know you wanted to come in, so I'm going to let you come in, and then I might have a question as well.
I'll be very quick then, thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to the team. We do get a lot of positive feedback, and I think we should all acknowledge that it's some really good work that's been done in this area. The community wardens are a split resource, particularly supporting Leamington and Warwick now. Can you just let me know how the resources are kind of divided between the two towns?
Yes, certainly. They're actually a Warwick district resource. They're for the whole of Warwick district. Now we are a small, perfectly formed team of exceptional individuals. So we've got a community warden supervisor and we've got 5 full-time community wardens. So we can't be everywhere all at once, but we certainly, in terms of Warwick, Kenilworth and Leamington, the approach that we've taken is that we have an identified spot for each of those towns, and Whitnash, sorry, for the 4 towns. So we do have a warden as a sort of identified special point of contact for those specific towns. So we do ensure that our tasking of patrols does cover those areas, so we have our regular tasking, but also depending on what is going on in different areas, whether there are events going on or whether there are specific requests possibly by our town councillors, for example, then we will, we will deploy to anywhere that, that feel they need some support, and not forgetting the rural areas as well. Our wardens have worked on various incidents to do with rural crime, where they've worked with our rural crime advisors and our rural crime team, police rural crime team. So where there's been challenges up at Newball Common, for example, in the woods, and damage being done to, the natural environment, for example. So they're multifaceted, and they will go wherever they need to go to provide support and services that they're asked to provide. So does that answer your question?
And the other question, if I can just quickly, I understand it's an important message, really, that the importance of reporting these instances and the importance that has in your resource allocation. You do get a lot of cynicism from people who say, well, what's the point? They don't, some people recognise the importance of it, others kind of think it's, a little bit of a futile task sometimes when they're not seeing arrests and action taken. I've had a personal experience of trying to report an incident that I witnessed on antisocial behaviour. We'd heard about 101 and efforts to increase the response time and answering it, and it was extremely positive. It was picked up almost instantaneously. I rang it. That was the end of the good news, though, because half an hour later I'd been triaged. I was still sitting in a queue waiting and kind of losing the will to live. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the user experience, what steps we take to sort of check that it is user-friendly, that we are allowing reports to be made in a way that's proportionate and we could expect publicly spirited people to sort of stick with. Because I must admit, by the end, I'd lost the will to live, and I could really understand why people don't give up. And it's obviously extremely important that these figures are accurate and that these reports are being made if we're using them as a basis for, allocating resources.
Thank you. And I will take that experience back to our Command and Control Centre, because there has been a significant investment in making sure that actually reporting into Warwickshire is at a much better situation than it's been over the last 5-6 years. We had an area for improvement from HMIC around our response times and our call times. And actually, it was as recent as the end of April, we were able to sign that AFI area off, because actually there have been significant investments and improvements. There are still lots of mechanisms for reporting offences into Warwickshire Police. So again, the 101, the 999, if there is a crime in action or it's a risk of life. I would also, the single online home portal is a really great platform to report matters in as well. All of these reporting mechanisms all come into the OCC, our Operational Command and Control Centre, and they will be threat assessed against threat, harm, risk, and then an appropriate response will be allocated to it. Now, that response may not always be what you expect, but that should be explained to you. So I'm happy to take that back, Councillor, if that is your experience. I can certainly feed that in, and we can make sure that actually there is some review of that as well. We also have a victim satisfaction team now, which was relatively new over the last couple of years for Warwickshire Police. So we field through, I think, 35 in every 100 calls made in, so we review them. It's allocated out to a supervisor, lessons learned are shared, and if there's areas for improvement, we're picked up on those as well. And then we would normally go back and have a phone call with that person, that victim, to make sure actually that they're now happy that that service is improved and we put actions in place. Does that answer that question? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I've got a question, maybe a follow-up as well for Councillor Sinnott, just about how the board works, because this is part of our job, is scrutinising how the board's working. So if I look at some of the data in the report, so obviously ASB is up by 21%, nearly 22%, vehicle theft 30%, shoplifting 32%. When the board gets those figures, what does it do?
We're talking about the South Warwickshire Partnership Board here. Yeah. We do have the data analysts attends and we talk through it. They get scrutinised and asked. Some of the hotspots, there's one out by Harbury, an odd place for one, but they got a motorway junction there and, you know, a lot of crime goes on there. Warwick, with the hospital, A&E department, a crime hotspots, but that's where the victims end up. We do scrutinise it, ask all the questions from the police and their own teams. It's the understanding of the data and what sits behind it. I did hear the comments earlier of reoffending. Absolutely, that's where we need to be. We did actually ask the question at the last South Warwickshire CSP, what does sit behind it and how do we get underneath that? Because without the understanding, we can't take the appropriate actions. So the board picks up the data, it picks up on themes, it feeds into the Safer Warwickshire Partnership and also the PCC's crime plan. So you've got all those things moving on. But this is where we get the traction, I'm going to say. Things actually happen. We can make a difference.
And could you maybe help committee with an example of a decision that's been made out of the board as a result of the data and those discussions?
Thank you. This is probably not the best example, but the 101 calls, I've been a real pain, a thorn in the side of the Police and Crime Commissioner about that, because the statistics and your experience there, Councillor Whiteman, on triage, and then the amount of time after triage that you're hanging on, you get triaged after 2 minutes. You're still there 30 minutes later. And that's kind of the experience of a lot of residents. So that's the sort of thing we can push back on and get some traction. And I take on board that things have changed. We've made improvements. Go back to your question again. Sorry, can you just remind me?
So my question was actually, so what you've given me is an example about how we might improve customer service. My question was about, if we're seeing spikes and increases in data, can you point to an action that the board has taken to try and address those spikes and how effective it's been?
I think Liz is bursting to tell us that one.
I think it's just really looking at how we get our overarching community safety priorities as a result of the strategic assessment process. Those priorities are taken to the board, who approved them back in February last year. And then the board tasked the South Warwickshire Operational Partnership, which is the officer group, the doing group, tasked them to go away and pull up action plans to actually address those priorities. And I think you all received copies of the most current action plans for business crime, rural crime, ASB, and violent crime. So those action plans were then presented back to the board, and so they are monitored on a regular basis at board meetings, and the board will be looking at the data. They will be cross-referencing that with what is in our action plans and what we're delivering. And if there is any data that drops in front of us that causes us concern, it's then a case of how does that translate into an intervention. For example, at the moment with business crime, we've got a very high number of shop thefts going on. And as a result of that, certainly Michelle and Sophie in our team have been working very closely with the Retail Crime Initiative, with other partners, with police, obviously, in really honing in on actions to work out in the business community to prevent shop theft, to address the causes behind it, and to provide support to those retailers. So that's kind of a direct example in terms of, you know, interpreting what's happening with data and then, you know, weaving that into our action plans, which are, you know, they're live action plans. We are constantly updating them and monitoring them. So that's how the sort of cogs turn, if you like. And it's also, in the board meetings, it's bringing agencies to account. Like I say, in terms of the reoffending, having people come to us and say, well, can you explain what's going on? Because we need to get a grip of this and we need to know what we can do locally to tackle those issues, because the scope is so huge. So that's fundamentally
Okay, great. Thank you. That was helpful. Thank you.
I was going to come in there with just a specific example of a lot of ASB going on around the racecourse, stolen bikes, motorbikes and the likes. There's a sharp increase in reporting, tracking them back with intelligence, goes back to a certain property, one of our properties. And so the partnership moves into action to deal with it. And it's funny how when you deal with prolific offenders or properties, things just fall off a cliff. The shoplifting in Sainsbury's, if you can deal with the perpetrators, and they're a prolific one, it soon changes the stats around.
Okay, thank you. Right, sorry, I am going to indulge Councillor Barton.
Yeah, just very quickly, it's an observation like you've just said. I am not a fan of comparing this year to last year, because it was 1 last year and it's 2 this year, it's gone up 100%. So it doesn't actually mean anything. I mean, theft of vehicles, 193 last year, 251 this year. It might have been 300 the year before and 400 the year before that. That's why I like, I'm being very quick, on page 21, where it compares 1, 2, 3, 4 years or so. It compares the data over 4 years. So if you take Wicknash, you reckon that our reported ASBs have gone down 3%. They're not. They're exactly the same as 22, 23. So they're zero. They haven't gone down. They're zero. But what worries me are things like Myton, Warwick, Myton and Heathcote, where it's continually gone up year after year. So I do believe that more years on a report and the trend line is a lot more informative than comparing it to last year. That's all.
Chair, can I just add around the board as well, that actually, and that's a really good point, because part of the board process is reviewing, making sure that actually the action we've taken does inform the plans going forward. So if we've had a positive action or an outcome from that board, whether it be partnership-led or police-led, then that does help those stats going forward. So actually we've got that legacy memory, we've got that organisational memory of what worked in that particular location or for a similar problem somewhere else. So without that board process, without going through the start, middle and the end of a problem, I think it's really key that you know that review part is where we learn those lessons and actually how we do something different or better next time.
Great, thank you. I am trying to bring this to a close, Councillor Sinnott. Sorry, Councillor Melrose, I know you wanted to ask a question. I've taken a general rule, and Councillor Chilvers fell foul of this at our last meeting, of members of the committee asking questions rather than portfolio holders. May remind all councillors that there is a pre-scrutiny questioning process, so we can put those questions in beforehand, and those are published and put into the public domain as well. So, thank you everyone for a healthy discussion, lots of questions. Thank you, Chief Inspector Ryan, for attending again this evening. Liz as well, and sorry, I forgot Michelle, apologies. Thank you for attending this evening to talk to us about this important item, and thank you for all the work that you do, because I know it is one of those things that actually has the biggest impact on residents, one of the things that they're really concerned about. So Thank you very much. It's really important work. Right, I'm going to move on now to item 7 on the agenda, which is the Biodiversity Action Programme Annual Report. We have Becky Davis here as the Climate Change Adaptation Officer. We also have Councillor Roberts as portfolio holder. I think I'm right in that. Sorry, Councillor Roberts, just checking that. I'm going to give this one, if we can keep this to 10, 15 minutes, I think that would just help us keep on track. Becky, I'll hand over to you just to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've just got a bit of a summary to give about the report itself, and happy to take any questions. So the report provides an update on the Council's Biodiversity Action Plan, focusing on key achievements from last year, covering the 2025-26 period. Some of the key highlights are presented as an infographic, again like we did last year, and the report also covers other activities that have contributed towards delivery of the action plan. Further progress has been made on habitat creation and restoration, community engagement and other initiatives, with 31% of council land now under what we would class as active management for biodiversity. And some of the key highlights have included enabling the planting of over 16,000 trees and over 1,000 metres of hedgerow, planting over 139,000 bulbs, including daffodils, crocus and other bulbs, the creation and enhancement of meadows and wetland features, and much more. The quarterly biodiversity newsletter continues to share work being undertaken by the Council, partner organisations and local community groups, now with over 1,600 subscribers. The Council's first biodiversity duty report was published this March in accordance with the strengthened biodiversity duty introduced through the Environment Act 2021, and the report summarises the actions undertaken to conserve and enhance biodiversity across the district, and it also sets out priorities and planned activity for the next reporting period to January 2031. The Warwickshire Local Nature Recovery Strategy was officially launched this May, which is another requirement of the Environment Act 2021, and its aim is to reverse the decline of nature by identifying opportunities to protect, restore and better connect habitats across Warwickshire. And as a supporting authority, we have been involved in helping to shape and review the strategy throughout its development. And going forward, it will help us to ensure that we focus our action in the areas that will have the greatest benefit for nature. Work has been ongoing to strengthen planning policies across a range of environmental themes for the new South Warwickshire Local Plan. Natural England's Green Infrastructure Framework has been incorporated into the policies to secure improved standards for tree canopy cover and green space provision within new developments. Opportunities were explored to increase biodiversity net gain requirements, but unfortunately, very recently, this has been shown to be unviable. Therefore, we will continue to require the statutory 10% BNG for all applicable developments. However, the policy does require all developments to demonstrate a net gain in biodiversity in line with the current approach that we take. Policies also require development to support the conservation of important species and habitats that are identified through the Local Nature Recovery Strategy and other local plans and strategies. Partnership working is key to delivering the action plan. So Warwickshire Wildlife Trust continues to be a key delivery partner supporting biodiversity improvements across the district, including management of our local nature reserves with support from local volunteers, delivery of our Free Trees for Farmers scheme and our Wilder Communities scheme. We worked with Warwick University last year to identify suitable locations to create scrapes, which are shallow wetland features, using their soil moisture mapping that had been undertaken. The British Trust for Ornithology, BTO and local groups undertook bird activity surveys at St Mary's Lands to help inform future management of the area to protect skylarks, meadow pipits and other important bird species. Local interest groups continue to provide knowledge, expertise and practical support in the work that we do. And lastly, Warwickshire County Council, who we continue to work very closely with in a number of different areas. The report also sets out how biodiversity improvements are measured and provides an action plan tracker and a measures reporting table as appendices. And just lastly, the report concludes with plans for the next 12 months, which will include further creation and enhancement of habitats, continued seasonal communications and campaigns to encourage local nature action, delivery of nature-focused events, continued support for the local plan, partnership schemes and implementation of a new biodiversity net gain software system into the planning system to support assessment, monitoring and reporting of BNG.
Great, thank you. Right, I've got Councillor Kohler and Councillor Barton and Councillor Luckhurst and Councillor Harrison. But just remind members, let's keep this short because there's still quite a lot for us to get through this evening. Last 2 weeks ago, I adjourned the meeting at 10:15 and we all came back the day after. I don't want to be doing that again, but we need to scrutinise these things properly. Okay, Councillor Kohler.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. It is my favourite report of the year, I think, of the annual reports that we get. Mindful of time. Glyphosate. We've obviously made some progress in reducing our use of glyphosate. Could you just outline what our plans are for reducing it further?
Yes, so as councillors may be aware, we have been trialling a reduction in weed spraying across the district of streets, pavements and pathways through the street cleansing contract. We trialled it in a small number of areas and then expanded that across the district so that all areas now receive 1 weed spray per year instead of the previous 2 sprays, with the exception of town centre areas which still receive the 2 sprays. Councillors may also be aware that Warwickshire County Council also carry out weed spraying. So our next step is to continue working with them to see if we can head towards a collective weed spray approach, with the aim being to reduce joint glyphosate use. So that's the next plan, and also just to continue seeking ways to reduce it as far as we can.
Yeah, thank you. Going from the numbers that you gave, we're compared with 2 years ago, we're kind of using 69% roughly of the glyphosate that we were 2 years ago. So that's a good reduction, but really want to encourage us to find every way possible to reduce it further. Next question was about hedgerows. So we're obviously celebrating planting hedgerows, which is absolutely fantastic. Do we have any idea how fast developers are ripping hedgerows out?
No, is the simple answer. No, we don't have any data on that ourselves. There may be data available on that, but no, we don't have that information. Our focus has mainly been on hedge planting opportunities that are on district council land, although our Wilder community scheme that we deliver in partnership with the Wildlife Trust does extend to other public land, such as town and parish council land, schools, allotments, churches. So we try and expand hedge planting as much as we can. But no, sorry, we don't have any data.
Thank you. Might I suggest that, can we investigate a way of trying to measure it? Because obviously it would be much more powerful to say, yes, there was a net increase in the amount of hedgerows with confidence. And I suspect that quite a lot of the incidents where hedgerows are taken out by developers, they probably do get reported through to the council. So then if there's a way of kind of comparing it with Google Street View, for example, as to how much there was and how much it's gone, then coming up with some kind of estimate would enable us to give a more rounded picture. My dad always used to say that you only measure the things that you care about, and frankly we care about our hedgerows, so we should be measuring it. And if there's a way of, without placing too much burden on officers, of measuring it as a net, I think that would be a good gain. Next question, solar farms. Is there anything that we're doing around solar farms to really try and maximise the biodiversity gain that can be seen around solar farms?
That's not something that's included in the Biodiversity Action Plan at the moment, but it's something that we could consider in the future.
I think that would be really good because we are seeing some applications for solar farms get approved. So as they come through, it's an opportunity. So if we can try and work with them and be constructive and say, look, can we trial X, Y, and Z? I think that would be a good opportunity. Last thing, and then I'll let somebody else go. There's lots of community groups around working with biodiversity. I've got 2 or 3 in my ward alone. Have we thought of doing some kind of annual celebration event to try and bring them together and just, without telling them, just let them network? so that they can make connections and that kind of stuff. And if we do it in a wet and miserable, horrible month, then we're not kind of taking them away from doing good stuff outdoors.
We held a nature patchwork event last March, again working with the Wildlife Trust, which was very similar to that. It brought lots of local wildlife groups, partner organisations together to try and sort of encourage, inspire local action, so they could share the work that they're doing. And then we held sort of a similar event in October here in the Town Hall, a South Warwickshire Local Climate and Nature event. Again, it was a chance for groups, town and parish councils and other organisations to share the work that they're doing. And we will be repeating the Nature Patchwork event in February. So we specifically picked a time of year where people aren't out and about enjoying. So yeah, we're the one we held last year was in Leamington. This one we're going to hold in Warwick, and then we hope to spread it further in future years as well. Yeah.
Fabulous, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Councillor Barton.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Councillor Kohler, for nicking my first one. 1,325 metres of hedgerow planted. I bet there's 10 times that's been ripped up this year. It just disheartens me totally and utterly the way we are destroying Warwickshire with just taking up hedgerows just for, well, I don't know, it just, yeah. You also say 632 metres of hedgerow traditionally laid. That managed to fill my inbox up when you did it along Heathcote Road. Well, there you are. Yeah, you know that one. Along Heathcote Road, I can't remember the name of the road. The joins, you took down, well, I could say you actually took down about 100 metres of hedgerow and turned it into a traditionally laid. And I think that was a negative, not a positive. So it'd be nice to know if you are going to do a hedgerow traditionally laid, whether you actually talk to the residents who adjoin that hedgerow. The other one was 2 ponds sustainable drainage. I mean, if you could help us turn our Lido at Whitnash into a feature, that would be much appreciated. We are looking for a way of encouraging these little ducks here. They come every year along with the frogs, as you probably know, and the tadpoles. Every year they come along to Whitnash for their spring bank holiday, and they have to leave because it drains away. But if we could make it a bit more sustainable, where we can leave some water in there, if you've got any ideas on that, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Do you want to come back on that, or?
No, I'm happy to take those away, thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Luckhurst, then we'll have Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I was pleased to read that we've enabled the planting of nearly 13,000 trees across the district. Do we have any data as to what the survival rate of these is, or is expected to be based on past experience? For every 100 trees planted, how many can we expect to see maturity?
I don't have that data to hand, but it's something that I can go away and ask officers in our green spaces team. I think that's one of the reasons that we tend to do a lot more of the smaller whip planting as opposed to putting some of the sort of more mature young trees in, because they have a greater survival rate, is what we found. So yeah, but yeah, I can go away and ask the question.
That's great, thank you. I'll leave it to you. Short one.
Great, thank you, Councillor Luckhurst. Councillor Harrison, if we could keep this sharp, that would be good.
Very sharp. But echoing Councillor Kohler's point, this is one of the great reports to read every year, and it's just nice to see some good news in there. And a couple of points. Yes, just on positives. Great that the scrapes were introduced at St Nick's Park. You know, in conversation with someone on your team, because I get a concern from residents. You always get a concern, even on good initiatives, but they came back to myself and back to the resident very quickly. So it's great to see that happening. Again, the work on St Mary's Land, because I'm on the working group for that, so it's fantastic to see those BTO surveys happening every year. And also, I'm involved in one of the local groups, Warwick 100 Challenge, where they have to spot 100 birds in the area of St Mary's Church every year, and they get the 100. A lot of that is due to St Mary's Land. There's some fantastic nesting and activity going on there. The numbers there are definitely increasing. The work on Hatton Park, by the way, is fantastic. The Hatton Park green in the middle there. And then finally, my question is, looking at section 6, page 9, was the work going forward. actually touches on about the importance of getting in with design, with developments and developers. Tashbrook Country Park wasn't mentioned, and therefore, and we've been having a lot of briefings about the progress on Tashbrook Country Park, and therefore it was just a question about, are we getting, you know, your team getting involved in the plans for that quite early on? It just wasn't mentioned in there, and I was just interested in if that was in fact the case, if it was being looked at.
Yes, thank you. Yes, no, sorry, that should have been mentioned in there. As you say, that project's being managed by another team, but we are very keen to get more involved in that and try and support in terms of the biodiversity enhancements to that site. So yeah, that is something that we plan to do this year.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Can I just ask one question, just linking up a couple of things? So Becky, you mentioned we've sort of had some pushback, shall we say, about biodiversity net gain and our desire to push further than 10%. Just thinking into Councillor Kohler's question about solar farms, is there any opportunity there for us to actually push things further? Because I guess for me, a solar farm feels like an area where it would be easier for us to ask for more biodiversity enhancements. That's probably easier to do than if you're building a housing estate. And I'm just wondering, is there any scope for us to be pushing harder on those big sites where we could actually achieve a slightly bigger gain than the 10% that the legislation is trying to constrain us with?
I can certainly put it to planning colleagues again, but I know the conversations that we've had recently, it has been a no, unfortunately. I think there are changes being made to the biodiversity net gain system more widely as well in terms of which developments are applicable and which aren't. Yeah, lots of change, unfortunately, which brings lots of uncertainty. And yeah, we were a bit disappointed that we couldn't push to go further than 10%. But we have got lots of other policies in the local plan that we've really tried to strengthen that will bring other biodiversity enhancements. So, but yeah, I can certainly ask planning colleagues that question.
Great, thank you. I wonder if that's also the sort of thing that we should be bringing up with our local MP as well, because actually I can understand, well, it seems strange that actually there's a blanket rule for biodiversity net gain that applies to developing a housing estate in an urban environment versus effectively sticking stuff in a field in the middle of nowhere. So I just wondering if that's something we should be pushing our legislators on as well. Councillor Kohler.
Just very quickly, since you brought solar farms up again, I guess we can't change the rules in the planning legislation, unfortunately. It seems that we're completely boxed in on there. But if when we have a developer coming forward with a site, if we could engage with them positively, we might find that we are able, they are willing to partner us in exceeding it anyway, even if it's, the legislation doesn't insist that they do.
Good build. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Thank you for coming this evening. And I think, again, some sort of good questions, good discussion. And as you know, that's a report that's actually committee welcome, because it's nice to read some nice stuff. And it's always very well presented as well. I think the infographic works for us as well. It's a good way of communicating. So thank you very much. And thank you, Will. I don't know if you're staying, Councillor Roberts, or if you're escaping. I'm not going to take it personally. Right, okay. Item 8 is actually, so we're on to Cabinet Agenda call-in. So this is a non-confidential item, which is item 7, which is the Linen Street multi-storey car park. I am aware, of course, there is a confidential appendix on this as well. So if we're straying into that territory, I will be asking for some advice from Mr. Knight. And we may need to go into confidential session, but obviously it'd be good to keep this as open as possible. If we can get through this by 8 o'clock, I think that would be good. It was called in by the Lib Dem group. The reasons for the call-in were the significance of this site in Warwick Town Centre, which has been an old unresolved eyesore for many years. The scale of the investment for the feasibility study and the potential future impact on the MTFS through extra costs and lost income, and the potential significant environmental hazards for the project. I think I'm going to start, Mr. Knight. Do you want to give us a quick overview? Assume, obviously, that people have read the report, and then I'll be coming to the call-in author, it was Councillor Dixon, just to start us off.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think probably most members will recognise this is not a straightforward site. That's probably a bit of an understatement, due to its location, age, and lease, so what are called sublease or lease arrangements within it. The asset itself is circa 50 years old, and we know that the condition of the property is not going to get any better over time. It'll only get worse. And we've had to do, as well as obviously the public element of it closing back in 2021, we have done a temporary closure of the basement pending some repairs, which we hope to start in June, which means we should hopefully be able to reopen the basement in a few weeks' time, subject to those repairs being done and signed off. So knowing that we've got a challenge with this particular property, then there was a request to look to get a resolution to some point around it. And one of the challenges around it is the lease obligation we have, which is now, I think, circa 99 years. So basically, if we wanted to get hold of sort of full control of the site, then ultimately what we currently understand is we'd have to transfer that lease rights to, we'd have to provide secure parking at another car park within a reasonable distance, and the only one we've got is West Rock, and you then lose probably about 38 spaces at West Rock if you put a secure compound on there. So what we're looking to do here is to appoint a project management consultant who will then help undertake some feasibility work looking at extending the lifespan of the building. That may involve a partial demolition, and look to get some reinstatement of, we're looking around estimated 60 public car parking spaces. Depending on how you strengthen the building, that could extend lifespan by 25 years. It could extend it by 40 years, depending on what you do and the cost of it. The feasibility budget, this is quite a difficult one to actually estimate what we think the feasibility would cost. So what we decided to do was put a higher estimate in than we think we may need, just in case, because there are going to be some quite technical aspects of this. So the idea being is once the project management consultant is appointed, they will then be doing the detailed scoping work to hone down the feasibility scope and then costing. So I don't expect the full budget needed, but I thought it was sensible because this is a complicated site to put perhaps a little bit more into on the safe side rather than needing to come back for more money. The final bit really is I think there is also a lack of car parking in Warwick. Warwick does need car parking. So, for example, losing 38 spaces in West Rock would only make that problem worse. Whereas if we get 60 spaces back available to support the town centre, then that would be a good place to be. We did some very what I call high-level financial modelling comparing West Rock versus Linden Street, and that will then be re-reviewed as part of Gateway Review. So the idea being is once the initial feasibility work's done, we've got more certainty over diesel over numbers and the options, then we would look then to do a Gateway Review. Subject to that, another cabinet report in terms of then moving it forward. So that's currently where we're at the moment. The fun bit I will also say, we've also engaged, myself and the leader of the council met the sub-leaseholders at Martinique Square in Warpack. Back in April, we did a Q&A with them, and they've been having weekly email updates from us in terms of the progress we're making as well. So we've done quite a lot of work to keep them informed, and they've been really I think they've just put a note of their thanks to their patience and engagement over this, because obviously it's disruptive for them, but ultimately safety is the number one priority.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Knight. Councillor Dixon, I'll come to you to kick us off and then open up to other members.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Knight, for the report. I was particularly interested in what you were saying about the leaseholders and how they've been kept informed, because that was one of my questions, what are leaseholders saying to us, and more considered, what might they be, threatening is probably the wrong word, but considering their options on this, because as you say, they have been incredibly patient. I did wonder, actually, bearing in mind that the JMP Group's structural survey has not yet been received. Am I correct in that? And to what extent may the recommendations that you're making here be changed? Is there a risk that they might be changed as a result of that structural survey? Or have I got that completely wrong?
No, where we've got to is the JMP Group have undertaken the structural survey, that is done, and we've had initial feedback from them both verbally and an interim report on the basement, the lower levels. They are just now waiting for these samples to come back from the lab in terms of some of the testing of some of the material. What JMP Group have advised is in terms of what they've asked us to they've asked the consultant to consider in terms of options. You've got option 1, or 1A then, is you could do like a partial demolition of the upper levels, strengthen the basement, and extend the lifespan of the structure for, let's say, 25 years. What JMP Group said it may be cheaper, and this is what they want the consultant to look at, is actually remove all the levels, put steel levels in, and you could extend the lifespan for even longer and potentially get more spaces open. So when we do the project execution plan, which is going to be this, I suppose, the more detailed consultant specification, JMP Group have suggested to the council that we look at both those option 1A and option 1B as part of it. Also, because JMP Group have got the understanding of the more technical understanding of the site. Yeah. If the project management consultancy needs structural engineer support, then we've got somebody on hand now who understands the building and has been quite involved in it. So the structural engineer report is due soon, and that will be shared with the leaseholders, and we've published everything on the website to date as well. In terms of the leaseholders themselves, yeah, they were frustrated on it, but they recognised as well the predicament the council's in, because obviously safety is important. But we have emailed them every week, and we've copied in the ward councillors as well. And I've had a few emails back thanking us for the communication to date.
Thank you for that. That's good to hear. Reading this report, because I have to admit that Linen Street is not an issue that I have been that familiar with, the detail of where we were going with it. And I just wonder whether it would help to have somewhere a timeline as to what the next steps are with this project, so that we can say, okay, we're going to get the full report from JMP, and then the consultant's going to come in, and then we're going to consider those recommendations and presumably then come back to Cabinet again. It'd just be useful to know what the next steps are.
Yeah, no, really, really good question. So the timeline will be, is if subject to Cabinet approving the report tomorrow, we'll literally the next day finalise the procurement for the project management consultancy. They'll then be starting end of June, July on what we call the project execution plan. That's the specification for the project. Once that's then signed off, they'll start commencing the feasibility work. And what we'd expect to see is before Christmas is the outcome from that work coming back to this committee if needed, and then for Cabinet, then a gateway review before Christmas ideally, and then we will know the direction of travel going into the new year, and we can then have hopefully a degree of certainty on the future of the building, and also enable residents and leaseholders to understand the future of the site.
Can I just check, just before, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Davison. So just so I'm clear, you talked about two things there. So a further report to Cabinet, I presume. So you talked about it coming back to ONS. I presume actually that's a Cabinet report that we may choose to call in. Yeah. Is that the same as the Gateway Review, or is that something different?
Yeah, the Gateway Review will be more of an informal meeting. So that will involve key stakeholders. For example, Councillor Davison is the political sponsor of the project. Ward councillors, finance, legal, consultant, etc., where we will review the outcome of the the feasibility work undertaking the options. We will then determine if there's a recommendation we want to bring forward, and then it'll go on the cabinet report cycle, and then subject to call in, which I assume you probably will want to call it in, but who knows?
Let's predetermine the committee. That's all. Councillor Davison.
Thank you. You've heard it is very complex and quite hard to work out, and the work we've asked to be done, there's so many permutations you can do in terms of what to do with the site. Darren's done a good job trying to limit it down, but it doesn't mean that what is plan A to him will happen. We've obviously got to see what's going on there, and it may be a bit different. The main thing I was going to say was the context of local government reorganisation, as you can obviously work out the time scale here that will be running into that. But our view is that if we delay, it could be a decade or something before anything happens, because LGR will just swallow everything up and there'll be far bigger issues. And that would seem unfair, particularly on the leaseholders, but also the residents in Warwick. So we're very keen to push forwards to move as far as we can. And it is something that needs sorted. It's not wasting money. I mean, the amounts of money will be a lot, but we're in the position we are. And I think we've got to get a solution to it. And in the long run, it will be, I think, good value, certainly compared to doing nothing.
Great, thank you. Councillor Kohler. And then I've got Councillor Luckhurst and Councillor Mateki and Councillor Dre.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much for the report. And usually when reports come in private, I usually complain that some of it could be in public. So I thank you very much for this being 95% in public and just being a very small bit in confidential. That seems exemplary to me, so thank you for that. In terms of the site, obviously there's an old car park on it now and there are issues with it. Do we or anybody have a clear picture of what our long-term aspirations for the site are? Is that the ideal site in Warwick for a car park? Is that what it should be in perpetuity? Or actually is there something else that should go there at some stage?
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor. I think it's, I think recognising if we didn't have the issue on the subleases or the lease, the 125-year lease, then simplistically you could demolish the site and do something different with it, basically. The challenge is that 30-year, that's sort of that 100-year, 125-year lease and the 99 years left on it. That's the sticking point, because ultimately you would, in order to get possession of the site, give yourself more options, either for public realm or for housing or for more car parking or anything like that. In effect, you would need to buy out that lease. And that's, and also my understanding of it, I'm not a lawyer, but that may or may not be an easy process to follow either, and it is well. So I think at the moment what we're looking at is we've got a legal obligation in terms of secure car parking. We know that the site is constrained because of its proximity. We know that Warwick needs additional public car parking as well. And I'm also mindful that I think members will recognise this has been a long-standing issue, and I think it's best to try and get something done. In terms of longevity, I think as a structural engineer sort of indicated, you could do option 1A, which is 25 years, or you could do option 1B, which could be 40 years. And which is, I think this is why I think let's get the feasibility understood, those technical requirements understood, and then bring it back then for further discussion once that's clearer. But yeah, it's definitely been one that's kept me thinking quite a lot over the last few months, if I can be honest.
Yes, and thank you very much for tackling this. This is definitely a hospital pass of a project to give to any new Deputy Chief Executive. So thank you for catching it and running with it. I guess my point about what our long-term aspiration goes a little bit to what you say about option 1A is 25, gives you 25 years, option 1B might be 40 years. I guess, how can we decide between those, apart from by a spreadsheet, I guess, cost-benefit analysis, we could do that. But also, if we've got something in mind for the site or what we think should go with that site, then that might inform what we do in that kind of medium term. Clearly, in the short term, we've got to tackle the problem and try and get our way through it as best we can. But when we come to what we want to do in a medium term, sort of 25 to 40 years, knowing what our long-term aspiration for it could help instruct that. So I'm wondering if there's just some kind of lightweight exercise that we want to do, engaging the town council, talking to other bodies around Warwick in terms of, or whether we think actually housing, we should be selfish and just do housing there. I don't know. But it feels like that's a missing piece of the jigsaw in my mind anyway. And in terms of what Councillor Davidson says about LGR, I think I absolutely agree with him that that's a threat, but it's also an opportunity in terms of, assuming that unitarisation comes through, that may unveil or make available other opportunities that wouldn't be there otherwise. Thinking about they've got a car park, the Barrack car park, which they've got issues with. So maybe taking the two together means that you can get to a better place more quickly.
Councillor Davison, do you want to come in?
Yes, so we're thinking along those lines a bit. That wouldn't be our decision to make. If it's unitary, it's can they link together. It is difficult moving the leaseholders into Barrack Street car park. It isn't equivalent. So there are challenges there, but yes, I sort of thinking on those lines. But back to the LGR, I think the big issue is if you expand the possibilities that way, it takes longer. And plan A and B that Darren's mentioned are, I think, the quickest. They won't be quick, but they're quicker than, let's think about housing and what do we do with the leaseholders? Where are we going to accommodate them, or can we buy them out? Or anything like that, it gets much more complicated and harder for the lawyers as well. So there'll be quite a lot there. So I think we're going on plan A and B at the minute, but those things are possible. I suspect there'll be more for the unitary if that's the way things are going.
Yeah, just in terms of Barrack Street, I'm obviously not an expert on that site, but what I do understand is also a complex site as well. And the lease requirement does what we call secure parking. So there would be infrastructure needed on any new car park in order to maintain that. The other thing I'd also say as well is one of the things, and I think it got picked up by Councillor Davis a bit earlier on, is around it with things like algae on the horizon, that could push back decision making on certain projects initiatives by a number of years. We know this asset is not going to get any better in time. It's only going to get worse. And the last thing and we know there's a problem there. So I think in terms of things like safety, public realm, car parking, let's try and find a way that can bring certainty for residents, for the leaseholders, and for the new authority in terms of direction. And then we can then look at the more medium, longer term future in the future. But if there are any suggestions or ideas, more than happy to consider them, because this has been a slightly complex thing to consider.
Thank you, Councillor Coder. Right, Councillor Luckhurst, Councillor Mateki, Councillor Dre. Councillor Luckhurst first.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully it'll be a quick one again. I've not parked at the site, so I might be completely wrong on this, but according to ZapMap, there's no EV charge points there. I might be a bit of a stab in the dark. What are the chances of us getting in this one?
Can I suggest that's probably the least of the problems with the site?
Can I just say...
Well, I'll bring it up anyway.
Yeah, I think what we were looking to do, one of the reasons why I think I've referenced it in the report is the reference to what we call the PET, the Project Execution Plan. That is where we are going to specify our requirements, that the nice-to-haves and the essentials. So, for example, you're quite right. If we can, within our budget, put in EV charging points, well, why wouldn't we do that? Because actually that's a good thing to do. What we have to be mindful of is can it be done within the constraints of the site in terms of how its construction? If we can do it within the scope, then we'll definitely consider it as part of other because there are other things we've got to consider as well, like that, and there'll be others as well. So yeah, we'll put it within the specification to be considered, and then it can be reviewed as part of the gateway.
We can't put one next to the pile of rubble if we knock it down. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matiki.
Yeah, thank you. I think the problems with Barrack Street is the district council doesn't actually own it. It's the county council, and the county council might have its own plans. So that's an absolute no starter. So they've, well, whether it comes or not, it's a problem that needs to be solved. Anybody who goes into Warwick knows that the place is an absolute eyesore. Something needs to be done. It's an old building, and I'm actually agreeing with Councillor Davidson. We need to be getting on with it. 3 years ago, we had plans on the table. We're going to be moving it forward, and nothing's happened in 3 years. Let's get this going. Let's get something decided and move on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Matiki. Councillor Dre.
What is the exact annual revenue loss being absorbed by the council while the car park remains closed?
I'd have to check those figures, Councillor Dre, to confirm that, because obviously it's been closed for 5 years in July. So that financial impact would already been taken into account into our medium-term financial strategy. What we have done, though, is we have modelled the impact of getting 60 public spaces back into use, and I'm more than happy to send that financial modelling to the committee to have a look at. It is high level, and it will be reviewed and refined as part of the Gateway Review.
Okay.
All right. How has the prolonged closure of Linen Street impacted footfall and revenue for independent high street businesses in Warwick Town Centre?
I wouldn't be able to answer that. We wouldn't have the data for that, unfortunately. It's not something I'm not sure how we'd measure that because of the duration and how we would do that. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Knight. I didn't expect you'd be able to answer that, and that's probably just a note for members as well. We do have a pre-scrutiny questions process, and there's been quite a lot of questions tonight that actually I think could have been covered in pre-scrutiny. That would have made this meeting more efficient and faster as well. So that's just a thought for everyone when we're coming in. This is a good forum for us to explore, to think about policy, to ask questions about strategy, but actually when it's things about facts in particular, those are better asked before the meeting. And we had quite a lot when we talked about the South Warwickshire Community Safety Partnership as well. Actually, those questions can be asked before, so that actually members and all councillors get the benefit of them as well. It's just a little bit of coaching, I think, for members to help us keep these meetings manageable. So thank you. I think some good discussion there. Can I suggest some comments from the committee? So I think first of all, I think we should thank officers for putting as much as possible of this complex subject in the public domain. It's something we've asked for previously. Committee are pleased to see that this issue is finally being addressed. We recognise the importance of resolving it as quickly as possible. Members would appreciate seeing a timeline set out so that all members can have visibility of that. And this committee will continue to scrutinise this through the cabinet cycle as appropriate. I think that would be, if members happy with those as summary, great, seeing enough nods. Right, I am now, I think, going to go into confidential session. So, and we're going to do one item on the call-in before we take a break. So, I'm going to propose to exclude the public and press for the reasons set out on the agenda, which is to consider resolving that under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, that the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items by reason of the likely disclosure of exempt information within the paragraph 3 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, following the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2006. I propose that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Armstrong will take you on that, and all those in favour. Great. Right, just one moment.